Thank you for having me. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First of all, I think I will touch on something that is very dear to me, something we have talked about yesterday as well, and something Justice Aisha, Justice Sapana, and other justices from the region have worked on. That's the Bangkok General Guidance. It's a document we had, although it was initially adopted to the Southeast Asian region, originally in 2016, we had tweaked it to be applicable to the South Asian region as well, and the document has been there since 2022. I would like to highlight for your reference, and I would urge you to look at it, that it contains guidance on application of gender perspective on judicial decision making. It talks about concepts, and it has also recommendations for institutional policy. So a lot of things we have been talking about yesterday, and I would assume for the rest of the day today, it has been somewhat worked on, and I have been working on gender issues for decades, all my adult life actually. So it's an issue very dear to me, and I would urge you to look at it. And it was a document that we had met on, discussed on, and all these things. So I would urge you to look at it. Going straight to the question, I will talk about, strategies to encourage more women into the judiciary, and strategies to foster meaningful inclusivity for women already in the judiciary, as Justice Shah also alluded to. But by way of background, because the Maldivian system is slightly different to yours, we have had, historically we know we have had some sort of judicial function for over 800 years. But the more modern structured judiciary came into being in 1909, when an office called the Mahkamat al-Sharia was established. But it wasn't until the enactment of the current constitution in 2008 that the judiciary became independent. I say this because prior to 2008, the trial courts were more or less under the Ministry of Justice. The High Court was under the President's office, and the highest appeal was to the President himself. So in 2008, what happened was we adopted a new, very robust constitution with separation of powers, clearly saying that each arm is separate from the other. For the first time, we had a Supreme Court as well. So that's by way of background. Until 2010, and then going back, we didn't have a woman in the judiciary until 2007. So the first time a woman sat on the bench in the Maldives was in 2007. I had the honor to be one of the two women, along with now Justice Josefa, who's currently in the High Court. But until 2018, the numbers didn't, it fluctuated, sometimes lower, sometimes higher, but never above 10 until 2018. But by the end of 2023, the total number stood at 30, which was a 200% increase, but that's 30 out of 150 altogether, because we have altogether 150 judges. We are a population of 500,000, so the numbers are not as massive as yours. But what led to that massive increase, or rapid increase, I would like to share. So what happened in 2019 was our Judicial Services Commission, which is a constitutional body which is independent to the judiciary itself, and it's based, it's developed similar to the South African Judicial Services Commission. There are criticisms against it, but it is what it is as currently. But in 2019, for the first time, a woman headed the Judicial Services Commission. And then consecutively, what happened was in 2019, when Supreme Court, 2 judges, including myself, were appointed to the Supreme Court, I went into the Judicial Services Commission as a representative of the Supreme Court. And what we did there was we made conscious effort to have more inclusive recruitment policies. So we encouraged women to apply, and also we gave them priority where women showed the same merit as male applicants. What had also happened was in 2019, when we were appointed to the Supreme Court, the number of female applicants increased. This, I suppose, as a background, I should also say, I'm surely going to run out of time. We have a large number of lawyers in the prosecution and in the Attorney General's office. About 80% of the lawyers in each institution are women. So it's not for the lack of women lawyers that this had happened. It was a lack of will, I suppose. But in 2019, when we were appointed to the Supreme Court, the applications increased. We started with a policy of recruitment where women were given preference, of course, based on merit, though, and taking into consideration where women had to go and reside in islands, whether they would be able to move with their families, and all these things. Of course, there are gaps, but then we tried to, as much as possible, to accommodate and women, so that, and where we could not in one tranche of applications, we would still get in touch with them for the second tranche. The other thing we also did, so one of the takeaways is that women in decision-making matters, and between 2019 and 2023, the policies developed were very, very conducive to that. And in terms of attracting women into the judiciary, we knew, and a lot of others knew, that there were several issues faced. We ourselves had the toilet issue in 27. I can remember when I was initially appointed to the Civil Court, which is a specialized court. Because there were no female judges, there were no female toilets. And I will not relate the story here, but then I had to actually embarrass my male colleagues to get a toilet myself. Anyway, and also currently what happens is whenever a new building is erected, we make sure there are toilets for both as well. I suppose we can talk about toilets all day. I can remember when we had a conference in Maldives, we had toilet stories for about half a day. And this was from across the region. So while it may be funny for some, for us, not really. Other things we knew and our issues are that men, even counterparts, often insult us. And not always, but most of the time they mask it as a joke. And shall I continue? Okay. And if they see, and if we retaliate, they will stop. And one of the things we have started to do is to tell the women during induction, so this is what's going to happen to you. So you'll be alert. If you're having problems, call me. I'm going to help you out. So we do a lot of mentoring as well. We are also viewed as kind of secretaries, although we are their equals, because every time we would have a committee or something, the men would want to do all the talking, and us, they would want us to take notes. I'm like, excuse me, that's not going to happen. So things like that. And day before yesterday, when we visited the exhibition, I also noticed that this was an issue here that we are addressed in a derogatory manner. Now I am at the Supreme Court, so you will refer to me as justice. You will not refer to me as anything else. So that is, yeah. So while I might sound rude asserting that, I don't think any of my male counterparts need to say that, so why should I? So I will assert that. Harassment, improper conduct are issues. There are fears that if women are brought into the judiciary that they will get married. Hello, men get married too. That women will get pregnant. Women get pregnant with men, and therefore, just because our physiology, we shouldn't be at a disadvantage. But all these things are now inserted into the induction program, where we also talk about these issues with both male and female judges who come into the system. We did also a study on sexual harassment in the workplace, and we seriously consider issues of harassment in improper conduct. One of the key things we also do is mentor women judges by women judges, and that makes sure that women judges have access to senior women judges. And in terms of training, women judges are given slots for training and exposure purposes in country and overseas, because otherwise we would have a rotation system and they would never get into the loop. We also started hosting a women judges conference. This was the second year we have it, and that has gone a long way. And while we had hoped after the first conference that more things will materialize, it did not. So this year, when we had the Women Judges Conference, we kind of thought, okay, we're gonna take this into our own hands, and we have developed our own action plan, which the judicial administration will help us implement. And we also adopted a resolution to say we are going to have a Women Judges Wing within the Judges Association, and we are at the cusp of getting that done. Public mindset, yes, is an issue, and I can remember when I was initially being inducted into the judiciary and subsequently into the Supreme Court, there was massive media campaigns. Oh, is she good enough? Does she have enough experience? Does she have the necessary educational qualifications? My family was brought up all these things, but these are never asked of the men. Why the double standard? Just because I'm a woman. But then we've also subsequently found out with the judgments and everything, which at the Supreme Court level and the High Court, it's publicly live cast except in-camera hearings. And people have started to, despite their dislike for women, I think people have started to respect that women stand their ground. So those mindsets slowly change. I'm not saying everybody's is. But I think at the end of the day, we have to make a concerted effort to know what we're doing. We've been talking the talk for I don't know how many years. Now we need to start walking the walk. And it shouldn't be that it shouldn't be about concern about power or letting go or anything like that, but then a genuine desire to actually address the issues for meaningful participation. I hope I've been helpful and that it's been somewhat giving you ideas.